My family banned me from my sister's wedding, claiming I'd ruin it. I'm Nora, and 35 years ago, I saved our Washington cabin while they celebrated Mira. The secret I kept? It broke more than silence. Where are you listening, and what time is it? Share below. Saturday brunches at my mother's place always had a certain quiet cruelty to them. The napkins were always folded into cranes, the mimosas bottomless, the silverware gleaming, but the atmosphere brittle as glass. That particular Saturday in late summer, her patio was packed. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen since Thanksgiving were squeezed around the long table overlooking her manicured garden. Croissants flaked, laughter buzzed, and the scent of lavender cleaner clung to everything. I was halfway through my coffee when Aunt Clara piped up, waving her phone. Just RSVP to Mira's wedding. The site so fancy, like Vogue meets Pinterest. My hand paused midair, spoon hovering above my fruit cup. Wedding site? I asked. She blinked. You didn't RSVP yet? I laughed lightly. I haven't received an invitation. The entire table stilled, and then Mira's voice, crisp and unapologetic, sliced through the air like she'd been waiting for this moment. That's because you're not invited, Nora. I blinked. My mother didn't flinch. She calmly raised her champagne flute, the glass catching the morning sun. It's better this way, darling. Let's not pretend otherwise. No one looked at me directly. One cousin coughed. Someone else reached for jam. It was as if my humiliation had been pre-planned, choreographed like one of Mira's childhood dance recitals. I cleared my throat, managing a nod. Excuse me, I murmured. As I stood, I felt dozens of glances grazing my back. No one meeting my eye, but all of them watching. By the time I made it to my car, my face felt stiff, like it was holding together 1,000 pieces that wanted to fall apart. I climbed in, shut the door, and let my breath finally escape. It rattled through me. That's when I heard it, just outside the passenger window, low and not meant for me. It's always her. Drama queen. I didn't look to see who said it. Instead, I reached into my purse for my keys and paused. There it was, the small silver key to the family cabin. I'd kept it with me for over 3 decades. The key was smooth now from years of fingers brushing it like a talisman I didn't know I needed. Staring at it, I whispered, "So this is how it's going to be." My heart thudded, not from surprise anymore, but from something harder, something older. The cabin. That word alone cracked open a memory I'd kept, preserved like amber. 1990. I was 10. It was early evening, golden light spilling through the tall cedars. I was kneeling beside my father in the cabin's little workshop. He was staining wood panels, and my hands were stained too, clumsy, sticky with varnish. One day, he said, this place will be yours to care for. I remembered the pride in his voice, the way he looked at me, not through me, not past me, at me. Mira had hated the cabin, too dusty, too remote. Ellen never bothered to hide her disdain, calling it quaint in that tight-lipped tone she reserved for things she found beneath her. But that weekend, that cabin had felt like mine, ours, a secret no one could taint. Yours to care for, I murmured now, tracing the ridges on the key. Growing up, Mira was always the gleaming one. Sparkling dresses, fake eyelashes by age 7, a rotating closet of special occasion shoes. She called me Mountain Girl in private. Ellen called her the light. Me, I was the shadow. At school, I was the one who brought home report cards covered in A's. But Mira, she brought trophies and flowers. I remember once at a family gathering, she twirled in a new dress, and everyone clapped. That same night, I showed Mom the story I'd written. She skimmed it and said, "Don't be so sensitive." No one ever called Mira. That evening, back home, I poured myself a glass of wine and sank into the couch. The wedding was 4 weeks away. My sister, my own blood, had not only excluded me, but weaponized the silence. And my mother, she'd poured the champagne on top. My phone buzzed. Aunt Leela, she rarely called. I answered. Her voice was low, urgent. Nora, she said, I thought you should know Mira's not just rewriting the guest list, she's rewriting the family legacy. I sat up straight. What do you mean? But the line went dead. No explanation, no follow-up. I stared at the screen for a long minute, then moved to the bookshelf. My fingers found the old leather folder tucked behind a row of gardening books no one had touched since Dad passed. I pulled it out, heart pounding. Inside was the title deed to the cabin. My father's signature scrawled at the bottom, and tucked behind it, an envelope sealed, addressed to me in my father's handwriting. I didn't open it that night, but I didn't put it back either. I didn't sleep much that night. I left the envelope on the kitchen counter, unopened, but impossible to ignore. It sat there quiet and heavy like a loaded question. At dawn, when the street outside was still silent and the cedar trees dripped with dew, I stood in front of it again, and this time I opened it. The letter was dated August 7th, 1991. If anything happens to me, this place is yours to protect. His handwriting was unmistakable, tight, angular, as if every letter had to fight for its space. Tucked behind the letter was a document, a notarized title deed stamped by the Tillamook County Clerk, listing me, Nora Evans, as the sole beneficiary and caretaker of the family cabin. The county stamp wasn't faded. The notary's seal was clean, legal, binding. I had never seen it before. Why didn't anyone ever tell me? Why had Mom never mentioned it when we sorted his papers after the funeral? Why had Mira? No, forget Mira. I already knew the answer with her. I poured myself a coffee I didn't drink and drove straight to the county office. The clerk was a middle-aged woman named Marge, with a tired expression and blue nails that clicked against her keyboard. She looked up as I slid the paper across the counter. Hi, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'd like to verify a deed. She examined the document with practiced indifference, then tapped a few keys. After a few seconds, her brows pulled together. According to our system, the property was transferred in 2014 to Ellen Evans. I stared at her. Transferred? What? She shrugged, like this happened all the time. Your mother brought in updated documents, looked official, supersedes any previous version. My father passed in 2005. She glanced at me, then back at her screen. Well, yeah, but this transfer was filed 3 years later. Not unusual. Families tidy up paperwork all the time. Families? Sure, just families tidying up. When I got back home, I didn't even take my coat off. I went straight to the hall closet, dragged out the old file box I hadn't touched in over a decade. It still smelled like pine and dust. I rifled through tax folders, birth certificates, yellowed school awards until I found it. A photocopy of a credit union application, Coast Financial. In the section marked Assets, the cabin was listed under Collateral. Guarantor, Mira Evans. Loan amount, $85,000, 0 cents. Date issued, March, just 3 months ago. My chest burned. Mira had used the cabin, the one Dad left to me, as security for her wedding loan, and she didn't even invite me to the wedding. I sat on the floor, the box of papers beside me, and picked up the letter again. This place is yours to protect. I had heard those words so many times growing up, I thought they were about love, legacy, something poetic. But now I heard something else in them. I heard a warning. I should have protected it sooner. The phone rang. I didn't check the screen. I just picked up. Aunt Leela, I said before she could speak, I need to ask you something. Did you know Mira took out a loan using the cabin? There was a long silence. Then her voice came quiet, tight. You're not the only thing she's rewriting, Nora. What does that mean? Another pause. You have no idea what your mother buried with your father. My blood went cold. What did she bury? But the line had already gone dead. I stood in my hallway, hand still holding the phone, and stared at the old deed now back on the counter. Outside, the sky was starting to darken. Evening had crept in while I hadn't noticed. I grabbed my coat, slipped the deed into the glove compartment, and dropped a small voice recorder, one I'd used back in graduate school for lectures, into my coat pocket. I was going to the cabin. The road narrowed as I climbed higher into the mountain. Wind pressed against the windshield, sharp with the scent of wet cedar. I hadn't driven this way in years, but my hands knew every curve, every rise, like muscle memory. The rain had thinned to mist by the time I pulled into the gravel drive, headlights sweeping over the front porch, and there it was, the cabin. It stood quiet beneath a canopy of old cedars, the porch light casting long shadows. I cut the engine and sat still, letting the silence stretch. My breath fogged the glass. I reached into the glove compartment, felt the smooth paper of the deed, and let my hand rest there for a moment before grabbing the recorder from my coat pocket. The gravel crunched under my boots as I stepped out. What I didn't expect was light already glowing from the kitchen window. I froze. Every instinct screamed to leave, but I moved forward, jaw set, heart racing. Inside, I found her. My mother was standing at the dining table, sifting through plastic tubs. White ribbons and centerpieces spilled out around her like debris from a storm. She didn't jump when she saw me, just looked up and said, almost breezily, I was checking the wedding decor. Some of the vintage lanterns were up here. It took everything in me not to scream. At 1 a.m., she smiled faintly. You're being dramatic again, Nora. I walked past her, set the envelope down on the table, and unfolded the deed. The paper laid flat between us like a line in the sand. She looked at it, her lips didn't even twitch. That, she said, that was never valid. Your father, he got sentimental after his heart attack. That paper means nothing. It's notarized. It has a county seal. It's legal. She let out a soft laugh. Legal means nothing when the man making promises isn't in his right mind. You know how he was. So emotional. I stared at her, stunned. You're saying he didn't know what he was doing? I'm saying he made a lot of promises he couldn't keep, especially when it came to you. There it was. The mask had slipped. I reached into my coat pocket and pressed record on the device without a word. Say it again, I said, my voice low. Tell me the deed wasn't real. Her eyes flickered, catching the red light on the recorder. Oh, for heaven's sake, what do you think you're doing? No one's going to believe you. You've always been fragile. She was baiting me. I didn't take it. Then why did Mira use the cabin to secure a wedding loan? That did it. Her body stiffened. The color in her face drained just a shade. She didn't answer right away. Don't be ridiculous, she said, but her voice had lost its easy rhythm. That was an administrative error. I'll look into it. I picked up the deed. You didn't think I'd ever look into anything, did you? Just like always. You thought I'd stay quiet. She didn't deny it. Instead, she busied herself with untangling a spool of ribbon, like this conversation was a minor inconvenience. I turned from her and opened the old hallway closet where Dad used to keep camping gear. It hadn't changed. Same dusty shelves, same battered cardboard boxes. One of them was marked with his handwriting. Tools, storage. I dug through it, past a rusted wrench and a faded baseball cap. Then I saw it. His old black cassette recorder, the kind with the tiny rectangular tapes we hadn't used since the 90S. It had a note taped to it. Cabin, May 5th. I popped the tape into the machine, clicked play. A low crackle, then his voice. If you're hearing this, something's gone wrong. My knees nearly gave. I made it clear. Nora inherits the cabin. I filed the deed. I left instructions. If they try to change this, fight it. I named Frank Temple as the witness. You'll find everything in my office. The recording clicked off abruptly. The air left the room. I stared at my reflection in the dark window, my face pale, my mouth open. My father had known. He had seen it coming, and he had tried to protect me the only way he could. I turned back. My mother hadn't moved, but she'd heard. I knew she had. You don't belong here anymore, she hissed, eyes sharp, voice low. I didn't look at her. I walked to the door, recorder still in my hand. I do, I said, legally, emotionally, and morally. And, outside, the rain had stopped. I stepped into the cold and drove away without slamming the door. In the passenger seat, the recorder kept playing. I replayed my father's voice again and again and again. Each time, it steadied me more than the last. I had just reached the fork in the road leading back to Tillamook when my phone buzzed in the console. A text from Mira. 3 words, clipped and venomous. Don't you dare. After I hit send, I just sat there, staring at my phone like it might blink back. There was no anger in me, not in that moment, just a deep, strange stillness. I hadn't responded to Mira's threat. I didn't need to. The facts were louder than any insult she could text me. The next morning, I drove to Astoria. I hadn't planned to attend her wedding brunch at the yacht club, but something about the way she used that word dare made me put on a black dress, pull my hair back into a clean knot, and show up. No one expected me. The valet hesitated when I gave him my keys, like maybe he thought I was lost. Inside, everything was lavender and lace, gold-edged name cards, floral arrangements taller than the servers, smells of melon, champagne, and artificial civilian. Mira always did love performance. I walked in and caught the ripple, heads tilted, hands paused mid-mimosa. I felt their eyes trail me like perfume. There was no chair with my name. I stood quietly behind the last row of satin-covered chairs and smiled when Mira looked my way. Lips parted just enough to show discomfort, but not enough to form words. Standing's fine, I said, just loud enough for the table to hear. Her fiancé, Evan, didn't look up. He never really looked at me. The brunch began with light chatter, the usual wedding games, and plenty of empty flattery. I kept to myself, stirring coffee that had long gone cold. And then it happened. The wedding planner, a young woman with a clipboard and a tablet practically glued to her hip, approached Mira mid-song. She leaned down, oblivious to the hush her voice would cause. Hey, sorry to interrupt, but I noticed Nora is still listed as the cabin owner on the property use permit. Should we update that before the ceremony paperwork gets finalized? Silence. I heard Mira's fork hit the plate. Ellen didn't miss a beat. Her smile never faltered. Handle it, she said through clenched teeth. The planner blinked, clearly confused. Of course, just let me know whose name I should input. I took a sip of my coffee, finally, hot. No one spoke. No one moved. Mira's gaze found mine like a dare. But I wasn't playing anymore. I wasn't the quiet sister in the background, the shadow in family photos. I wasn't the girl they forgot to invite and expected to stay quiet about it. In the hallway outside the ballroom, I stepped away for a moment, needing air, or at least a break from all the fake flowers. But of course, I didn't get solitude. I got Ellen. She was already there, arms crossed, eyes sharp. That was cruel, she said flatly. No, I replied. It was true. She stepped closer. You've always had this self-righteous streak. You're not some martyr. Don't pretend this is about justice. I didn't answer. She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope, handing it to me like she was offering peace. Your father changed his mind before he died. This, she tapped the edge, was his amendment. He realized you weren't strong enough to handle responsibility. Inside was a printed Word document. No signature, no date, no notary. I glanced at it and handed it back. You're showing me a Word doc, Mom? He was going to sign it. We just didn't get the chance, because he died. And you've spent every moment since rewriting the parts of him you didn't like. Her mouth tightened. Do you think this makes you look noble? She asked. Dragging your sister through mud on the week of her wedding. I didn't flinch. She dragged herself. I left her standing there and walked out to the patio. Later that afternoon, as I sat in the car outside a small coffee shop, my phone buzzed with a new email. It was from the HOA. Subject, Venue Usage Confirmation, Legal Ownership Inquiry. Dear Miss Evans, as per our records and your submitted documentation, the owner on title for the property in question is you. Please confirm whether you approve use of the venue for the scheduled event. Respectfully, Margaret Vickers, HOA Board Chair, I hit reply and typed just 2 words: use denied. Send. 40 minutes later, Mira called. I answered on the second ring. "You're ruining everything," she spat, her voice shaking. "It's not your everything," I said calmly. "It's my only thing." She hung up. There was nothing left to explain. By nightfall, I was home, legs tucked under me on the couch, a blanket across my lap. I didn't have music on or TV, just the sound of the clock ticking and my inbox still open. That's when I saw it. Instagram. Someone had sent me a story. Mira's account. A blurry photo of me walking out of the yacht club, shoulders back, head high, captioned, "Some people can't stand to see you shine." Underneath, "Ungrateful never looks good." I stared at it for a long moment. Then I exhaled. Not out of anger, out of clarity. I clicked out of the app, opened my email again. There, waiting, was a subject line from the county permitting office. Urgent. Cabin venue request revoked by owner. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled. The next morning, I was still in my robe, sipping coffee on the porch, when I saw a sleek gray car pull up in front of my house. It wasn't Mira's usual convertible or Ellen's leased SUV. This was colder, more deliberate, the kind of car that made neighbors peek out through their blinds but pretend they didn't. I stood as the door opened and Ellen stepped out first, in her usual white coat that always looked too perfect for weather. Mira followed, sunglasses on, though the sky was overcast. Then came a man I'd never seen before. Sharp suit, tan folder under his arm, the practiced expression of someone used to rewriting truth for a fee. They walked up the path without a word. I didn't invite them in. I simply stood, arms crossed, and waited. "This isn't how we wanted it to go," Ellen began, voice syrupy, controlled. "No," I asked, "because from my view, it looks exactly like how you planned it." The lawyer cleared his throat. "Miss Evans, we're here regarding the cabin property. We're asking you to sign a release, acknowledging the informal custodianship transfer your father made verbally before his passing." I held out my hand. He placed the folder in it. I opened it slowly, scanning. "This is a legal document stating that I was just holding the property for family use, that it was always intended to revert to your client, Mira, upon her marriage." "Yes," he said simply. Mira chimed in. "Dad told me you knew that you understood it was temporary." "No," I replied, flipping to the signature page. "He told me it was mine, in front of a notary, twice." I stepped aside and opened the door, waving them into the front room. "Come in. I think you'll want to see something." Inside, I pulled the accordion folder from the desk drawer I hadn't touched since last night. I laid out the papers like a dealer at a blackjack table, one after another. The notarized deed, the county filing receipt, the scanned letter with his signature dated 4 weeks before his final surgery, and the photograph. Me, my father, and a notary sitting outside the cabin porch, his hand on mine, the document in front of us. I turned to the lawyer. "You said he made a verbal arrangement. This is his written and legally filed will." "And this," I tapped the photo, "is the day it happened." He adjusted his tie. "This changes things." "You don't say." Ellen sat on the edge of the couch like it burned her. "This isn't what he wanted." He said it would keep us close." "You mean quiet," I said. There was silence in the room for a full 15 seconds. Then Mira snapped. "You're a bitter little archivist," she spat. "Always watching from the sidelines, always taking notes, judging. You've always hated me." I looked at her calmly. "I did. I just stopped cleaning up after you." She blinked, like the slap had landed, though no hand had moved. Ellen started to speak, but Mira turned on her. "You said you'd handle it. You said this wouldn't be a problem. Now look at this mess." She grabbed her bag and stormed out the door, yelling as she went, "You've ruined everything!" The car engine roared as she peeled away. Ellen stood, but for once she didn't have another mask to wear. She looked older, thinner in the daylight, like the truth had stripped her down. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly. I studied her for a long moment. Because someone finally has to. I walked to the door and held it open. She stepped through without another word. The air shifted when the door shut behind her. I leaned against it, breathing deep. Not relief, just resolve. The kind that doesn't come from winning, but from finally telling the truth. I walked back to the kitchen and opened my laptop. Inbox, one new subject, anonymous submission to local wedding blog. My sister's sabotaging my big day. Of course. The moment I opened the post, I felt my stomach twist. There it was, her smiling face, filter softening every edge, a pastel blue background with cursive font overlaid like it was part of a bridal announcement, except the words sliced like glass. Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones hiding behind silence. My sister has fabricated ownership of our family property, forged documents, and manipulated our father's last days. Mental illness is real, so is betrayal. Underneath the hashtag Protect the Truth, Wedding Week Wreckage. Within hours, I was tagged in story reactions, meme comments, and quote reposts from mutuals I hadn't spoken to in years. People I once invited to reunions, colleagues DMing with vague, worried lines like, "Are you okay?" and "Saw something weird. Call if you need anything." She'd set it up perfectly. A whisper campaign wrapped in a wedding gown. And I was the villain she'd carefully painted over months, maybe years. I sat on the edge of the couch, phone in my hand, unable to move. My thumb hovered over the reply button more than once, but every instinct told me that's exactly what she wanted. A storm of rage was bubbling beneath the surface, but I didn't give it to her. Instead, I shut off the phone. I poured a glass of water, and then I heard it, a knock at the front door. 3 soft, patient taps. I opened it to find Mr. Harper, my neighbor from 3 houses down, holding a tin of cookies. "I saw your sister's post," he said gently. "Mind if I come in for a few minutes?" He moved slowly, deliberately, and I guided him to the kitchen, set the tin down, and poured him a cup of tea. He didn't waste time. "I remember the day your father signed those papers. I remember because I drove the notary back afterward. She didn't have a ride, and your dad asked me." My eyes widened. I hadn't even thought to ask who'd been present outside of the photo I still kept in my drawer. He said, "I want Nora to have this place because she's the only one who ever sat still long enough to listen to the trees." He chuckled softly, eyes misty. "I didn't understand it then, but I do now." I nodded, a lump rising in my throat. "I can write a statement or, if it goes to court, testify if needed. I'm not getting any younger, but I still know what I saw." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Thank you. That means more than I can say." He stayed a little longer, sipping his tea and recounting how my father used to play him old jazz records at the cabin porch. I hadn't heard those memories in years, and now they felt like lifelines. After he left, I sat at my desk and started gathering everything. I organized a folder with printed screenshots of Mira's social post. I added copies of the notarized deed, the letter from my father, the guestbook page, and now Mr. Harper's typed and signed statement. I even included the old photo again. I didn't share it publicly. I didn't reply. I didn't text her back, but I saved it. "Ready," I murmured to myself. "If they want war, I'll fight with facts." Later that night, I opened the drawer where I kept the cabin's guest book. The paper was worn and smelled faintly of cedar and mildew, but the handwriting was still clear. First page. My father's words. "This place belongs to Nora. If you're reading this, it means she protected it." He hadn't known what future I'd face, but he'd left me something anyway. I pressed my hand to the page, closed the book, and placed it on the dining table. Something told me I'd need it soon. I was just tidying up when my phone buzzed again. Email from wedding planner roseandiv.com. Subject, urgent. Ceremony access revoked. I opened it. "Per request of the bride's family, please do not attend the ceremony or reception under any circumstance." Attached was the updated seating chart. I wasn't on it. No surprise there. But table 3 caught my eye. Media guests. and listed under that, Simon Tate, my ex. They tried to erase me from the wedding, but they forgot. I knew where the foundation cracked, and I knew who'd built it. 3 days before the wedding, the monthly HOA meeting was scheduled at the community center. Normally, the room was half empty, mostly retirees discussing fence heights and snowplow schedules. But this time, every chair was filled, and a few people even stood by the back wall with coffee cups in hand, murmuring behind their lids. Mira was there, so was her fiancé, in a gray suit too sharp for a neighborhood meeting. Their realtor sat beside them with a leather portfolio and a packet of property documents. I caught the words parcel near the cabin on the folder tab. I walked in 10 minutes late intentionally, and not a single soul missed my arrival. People shifted in their seats. The room seemed to tilt slightly when I pulled out the folder and the guest book from my bag and laid them neatly on the table in front of me. No one said a word. I stood, took a slow breath, and said evenly, "Before any land changes hands in this neighborhood, the truth must." All heads turned, some confused, others bracing. I opened the guest book to the first page and read the words aloud. "This place belongs to Nora. If you're reading this, it means she protected it." My father's handwriting, sturdy, looping, proud. I lifted my eyes just in time to catch Mira shift in her chair. Her expression didn't crack, but her nails dug into her armrest. Then I held up Mr. Harper's notarized affidavit. Notarized documents confirming the transfer. Witnessed, recorded, preserved. I placed the deed on the table next. Filed, stamped. Valid. A board member, Mrs. Tate, from 3 blocks away, tilted her head and asked, "Is this part of a legal dispute?" I met her eyes. "Not anymore. The truth is already recorded." And then, somewhere to my left, a hand began to clap. 1, 2, then more joined in. A soft, slow ripple of polite applause. It wasn't loud, it wasn't showy, but it was enough. Mira stood up mid-meeting, her face flushed with rage. She whispered something to her fiancé, grabbed her bag, and left in a rustle of fabric and fury. Her fiancé lingered a moment too long, eyes scanning the documents, then followed her out without a word. The meeting resumed awkwardly, but no one brought up the land transfer again. The realtor looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. That night, back at home, my phone lit up with a name I hadn't expected. Aunt Esther. Her message was brief. "I'm sorry. I always knew he left it to you. I should have spoken up sooner." A few minutes later, a cousin I barely spoke to anymore sent a voice note. "If you need me to write anything or talk to anyone, I will. I remember how much time you spent up there with Uncle. The tide didn't roar in. It shifted quietly, with grace." I was about to turn off my phone for the night when someone forwarded me a screenshot. Another update from Mira on her story. White background, black text. "Just because someone claims a property doesn't mean they belong in our family." But below it, one comment, "But she does." Username Walter Holland 54, my godfather. I stared at it longer than I should have, heart pounding with a strange mix of grief and gratitude. They were still trying to take the frame, but pieces of the truth kept bleeding back through. The next afternoon, I was at home, sipping lukewarm coffee, half reading the same email for the third time, when a knock came at the door. I opened it to find a man I recognized instantly, the wedding photographer. Young, bearded, clearly uncomfortable. "I was told not to give you these," he said, holding out a thick, unmarked envelope. "But I think they're yours more than hers." He handed it to me, nodded once, then walked back to his car without waiting for thanks. Inside the envelope were photo prints, cabin, cedar, wood grain, and a girl in black standing by the door. One shot showed my father's hands resting on my shoulders. Another captured a moment I didn't even remember, me laughing beside him, notebook in hand. They tried to cut me out of every frame. But what they didn't know was that I'd already printed my own version. It was early, the kind of quiet Washington morning where mist still lingered on the window panes, soft and uncertain. I stood in my living room, the envelope from the photographer open on the kitchen counter. The pictures were spread out carefully, each one like a heartbeat from a time when I still thought love in a family was unconditional. The cabin's wood-paneled walls glowed in warm tones in the photos. There was my 22nd birthday, my father smiling, cake half cut, and me with one hand resting on a legal pad. But it was the handwritten note on the back of one photo that made me sit down. To Nora, for what you saved. The next image caught me mid-laugh, pen in hand, next to Mr. Harper, the notary stamp visible in the frame. My father leaned over the table, handing me the deed. Proof, not rumor, not memory, undeniable full-color proof. I looked at them until the edges blurred from unshed tears. They hadn't just tried to erase me. They'd edited history, but they forgot who'd built it. At 9:15 a.m. email pinged in. Subject, legal outcome, HOA land dispute decision. My breath held as I clicked. After final review of registered documents and recorded affidavit, the HOA affirms that the legal title to the cabin remains with Miss Nora Evans. All pending land transactions involving this property are null and void, effective immediately. Below it, a reply all from one of the committee members. Rightful owner, glad it's resolved. There were no follow-ups from Mira, no emails from our mother, nothing from their lawyer. Silence, finally, was on my side. I closed my laptop, leaned back in the chair, and stared at the ceiling. I wasn't angry anymore, just tired, and finally still. I poured myself another cup of coffee and let the mug warm my hands as I walked back into the living room. I wasn't expecting to feel anything else that morning until I saw the little voicemail icon blinking on my phone, an old recording buried deep in my saved messages from 8 years ago. I pressed play. Hey, sweetheart, it's Dad. His voice had that worn-out smile I remembered best, like he was already halfway through his thoughts before the greeting caught up. If they ever forget, don't let them. That cabin, that wasn't just property. It was the one place that kept us stitched together. You knew how to hold it all, even when the rest of us were coming apart. That's why it's yours, not because I loved you more, but because you never asked to be chosen. I didn't cry hard. I just sat quietly, tears slipping down as if my body needed to wring them out gently. I let the message play twice. Then I archived it, but didn't delete it. Not this time. At 11:30 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Group text from cousins. Cousin Sophie, we were told not to mention your name at the wedding today. Another chimed in. Just stay out of it, please. I smiled to myself. Not with bitterness. Not anymore. I typed, back, don't worry, I already spoke my truth. Then I tossed my phone in my bag, laced up my hiking boots, and grabbed my keys. I didn't need to watch them toast champagne and pretend something sacred hadn't been stolen and weaponized. I drove toward the cabin instead. The road curved gently through the forest, sun filtering in through cedar. As I pulled up the gravel driveway, I noticed something odd. A bouquet of wildflowers sat on the cabin steps. There was a small folded card tucked into the stems. I always knew. I just didn't speak. Aunt Beatrice. I stood there for a full minute, thumb brushing over her name. She'd never defended me, never attacked me either. She just watched, quiet, until now. But what caught my attention wasn't the note. It was the second car parked just up the hill. A silver Honda. Someone was still inside. They hadn't moved, and I had the feeling this chapter wasn't closed after all. I thought I'd closed the chapter, but one more visitor was about to walk back into my story. The car door eased open with a slow creak. Aunt Beatrice stepped out, her coat pulled tight against the breeze, a tin box cradled in her arms like something fragile. She didn't speak right away, just walked toward me across the gravel, her eyes scanning the porch like she hadn't seen it in years. I almost didn't come, she said finally, standing beside me. But I couldn't keep this anymore. She held the box out. I think he meant it for you. We sat on the steps of the cabin while I opened it. Inside were papers yellowed at the edges, corners curled from time and humidity. Receipts from when the cabin's roof had been replaced. The first draft of the deed application. My father's handwriting unmistakable. A few letters folded carefully in envelopes marked simply, "For Nora." I unfolded one. "The others will celebrate Mira," it read. The ink pressed deep, like he'd been holding the pen hard. But Nora, she's the reason we even had something to celebrate. I closed my eyes, letting that truth land in places no apology ever had. Aunt Beatrice spoke again, quieter now. "He told me you used your college fund that year after his stroke. Paid the back taxes when no one else even noticed the county's letters." I nodded. "He never said a word about that to me." "He wanted to protect you, not just from the world, but from needing to prove yourself over and over." That afternoon, the wedding went on without me. A friend texted a blurry photo of Mira raising her glass, smiling like nothing had cracked, like she hadn't built her big day on the edge of someone else's silence. "To loyalty," she toasted, but not everyone clapped. Some of the guests had already seen the HOA announcement. The whispers had started, a few left before cake. No accusations, just exits. Quiet ones, the kind that say more than a speech ever could. Back at the cabin, I slipped a folded note inside the doorway and left it sitting on the entry table where my father used to keep his flannel caps. This was never about revenge. It was about truth. You erased me. I just lit a light so you'd see what you were missing. Then I turned the key in the old silver lock for the last time that day. The door clicked shut behind me, like a period at the end of a sentence I didn't have to rewrite anymore. I took the mountain road back slowly, no destination in mind, just breathing. Somewhere along the highway, a roadside diner blinked in neon, still open despite the hour. I pulled in to stretch my legs. As I passed the window, I saw someone had folded a napkin into the shape of a star, just like Dad used to do when I was little. Always when things were too quiet at the table. Always when Mom wasn't looking. A small smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. It wasn't much, but it was enough. They kept the spotlight, but I walked out with the roots. Vans applaud Nora's steadfast resolve, inspired to share their own fights to reclaim stolen legacies. Back at the cabin, I slipped a folded note inside the doorway and left it sitting on the entry table where my father used to keep his flannel caps. This was never about revenge. It was about truth. You erased me. I just lit a light so you'd see what you were missing. Then I turned the key in the old silver lock for the last time that day. The door clicked shut behind me like a period at the end of a sentence. I didn't have to rewrite anymore. I took the mountain road back slowly, no destination in mind, just breathing. Somewhere along the highway, a roadside diner blinked in neon, still open despite the hour. I pulled in to stretch my legs. As I passed the window, I saw someone had folded a napkin into the shape of a star, just like Dad used to do when I was little. Always when things were too quiet at the table. Always when Mom wasn't looking. A small smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. It wasn't much, but it was enough. They kept the spotlight. But I walked out with the roots. Have you ever stood up, like Nora, to protect a promise your family tried to bury? Share your story below and join others celebrating resilience. Follow for more heartfelt tales.